Hi there, this is BJ Jones. I'm the artistic director of Northlight Theater, and welcome to At Home with BJ. We are so thrilled. We got several Jeff nominations this year, and what was particularly gratifying for me is that given our focus on new work, that one of them was for Lauren Gunderson and Margot Melcon's The WICKHAMS, Christmas at Pemberley. The other was for Stephen Dietz's How a Boy Falls. And the other was for Scenic Design with William Boles' spectacular design for the WICKHAMS Christmas at Pemberley. And I thought, instead of just giving them a shout out on an email and putting it on our website, that I'd actually get an opportunity, because we don't do it too often, to talk to designers. So I invited William to join us, and I got him mid-sip from his Herod's Cup. Tea time.
Hello.
Tea time with William Boles. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks so much for having me.
Congratulations, first of all, for the Jeff nomination for the WICKHAMS.
Thank you.
It's not your first rodeo. You've done so much work, including at Cherry Lane, Kirk Douglas Theater, Victory Gardens, Steppenwolf, Second City, Lyric Opera. I mean, you're prolific, to say the least. And your work has, and I mean this in the best of all possible senses, at least from my reviewing your work, your resume, your website, has a kind of glorious grandeur to it.
Oh, and thank you so much.
Even though the WICKHAMS took place, and we'll put up some pictures, I hope we'll be able to see kind of a review of some of your work. Even though the WICKHAMS took place not in a beautiful ballroom or the upstairs version of the Pemberley series, but it took place downstairs in the kitchen. That kitchen had a grandeur to it, which I think was quite thrilling. And I was wondering if you could share with us, William, when you and Jessica Thebus, the wonderful director of the series, sat down to have your first chats, what were the kind of things that you kicked off with?
We were really interested, Jessica especially was really interested in an active environment. It's a working kitchen. So we didn't want it to feel like it was just a static environment. So everything was intentionally designed, and as far as how we could navigate the movement in the space. One of the things that Jessica talked a lot about is kind of the tempo of the piece related to the action, and that the people, the people who are working in this kitchen are exhausted. They're always working, so that when we can have those moments of respite and calm, when they start finding a sense of their own peace, it really contrasts. Even though we're dealing with a kitchen, those spaces were grand in those country homes. And so we wanted to still get the sense of class of what this home is architecturally down there. And so I tried to exploit the height of the space. We went as tall as we could, but we still wanted it to have a sense of warmth to it. And so the hearth is the center of the space. And one of the things I love about the arrangement at Northlight when the seats are in is that curved quality. That apron is a difficult thing to design for often, whenever you're trying to get an apron to relate. But I thought that shape was just so similar to the tone of the play that we ended up actually bringing in that curve through some of the other architecture. And then there's also a beam that's curved. And but those are kind of the things that I start thinking about when I'm putting the bones together of a piece, because the shape and all of that affects how it feels and how it's navigated through.
Yeah, and when you sit down with, now that's how it went with Jessica. When you sit down with other directors, do you find yourself being invited in to lead the conversation with regard to visual inspiration? Do you bring in source material? Do you bring in imagery? Or do you wait for the director to step off? I'm in the enviable position of being witness to a lot of those early conversations, but I think our audience might be interested to see how those conversations begin with different directors.
I think that it kind of depends on the director, honestly. Some directors have very specific images in their mind that kind of guide the play. And other directors are really open to being guided by someone that they trust. And to me, I think in the latter part of my career, the past few years, I've started feeling like I'm brought onto a project to influence it in some way. And I think ultimately that's what the goal is. And when you step into that role of kind of owning responsibility for your work, everything changes and the tone of the conversation changes and it becomes a collaboration.
I know that sometimes I come into a project as a director with certain physical, visual parameters in mind, not unlike what Jessica did when she said to you, this is a working environment where people who are working all the time, where it's where they let their hair down a little bit before they go back up to be their outward professional selves. And, but I know, for instance, in doing Mother of the Maid, for instance, we needed it to be many different locations. So it couldn't be one location specifically. So we came up with a kind of textual feel that also gave us height and moving parts. Do you find that the movement of the play speaks to you in a way, or do you look for textures and feels and atmosphere first?
I've started focusing on the movement to begin with, and I started thinking about what is the set doing for the play, and that's kind of my first way of thinking about the shape of the space. I started actually in dance in high school, and did musical theater before I ended up going into set design. But movement is something I'm always thinking about, and shapes are really my favorite thing. I just love shapes.
You know, one of the things that I love the most about the set, I brought my grandkids to before you had a rehearsal in the afternoon. This was during previews, and they came in. We were just trying to keep them busy because my wife was babysitting, and so they went on the set, and one of them is 6 and the other is 3, and they were just amazed. They walked up the stairs, and one of the things that I loved the most about your set, and one of the things I love as a director, and I wonder if you love it too, is the sort of shopping one gets to do as a designer, along with your prop designer, because it seemed to me that you and Mary O'Dowd, who was our prop designer, had this kind of, it was a blast to see all of the pieces, the minutia, the things that you picked that were of the period, shall we say, to populate this grand structure that you built. That looked like so much fun.
Mary O'Dowd is such an incredible collaborator. You know, on our first rehearsal, you'll probably remember it, when she was explaining how to use all these different props that she created. They weren't just sitting on a table for first rehearsal. She, you know, gave this whole experience of how to eat this food and wrap these presents. And she brings a particular magic to the process that I'm sure everyone else would agree with. But as a set designer, she is especially a gift to work with because she has such an insight to all these unusual things that she just has an amazing stock of.
Yeah, she, as I recall, she came in. I think the light is doing some strange things. I look like a ghost, don't I? Happy Halloween.
There you go.
Is that better? I remember she brought in a wrapped piece. She to give to a particular actor and she says, you could do this and you could do that. Her joy in and both of you, your joy in providing an interactive experience for the actors and the director is, it's thrilling to watch.
Thank you. And Jessica was guiding all of that, especially because we needed to know what was physically going to happen. So, it was kind of like almost like a musical piece, needing all these different movements. Like, we're going to wrap the presents here. We're going to put the cake together here. And then Mary had to figure out how to make the math happen of all that stuff.
And then we were, until COVID interrupted our life, you were also working on Mr. Dickens' Hat. And that's still in flux, of course. But I loved how game you were for whatever construct or environment might be required with regard to dealing with the virus. Social distancing has become a thing that we have to deal with going forward when we return to our theaters. Are people supposed to be 6 feet apart? Are people supposed to be wearing their masks? And we talked at one point about not doing our usual setting, but perhaps doing it in a flat floor configuration, which would accommodate social distancing. And I loved how game you were to maybe not have walls, maybe not have set pieces. That seemed to activate you in a really interesting way. Talk about that. When given just an unusual space or placing a play in a specific non-theatrical, what do you think about when you have to approach that kind of design?
Well, I do think about the space, no matter where it's going to be, even if it's a traditional proscenium, because that space has whatever you put into that creates a feeling. So, for example, I was working on this play a couple summers ago at La Mama, and the open space there is just gorgeous without masking. And that really influenced what I ended up designing, because I wanted to allow the space to be part of the conversation. And yeah, I think it's always kind of practice of composition, because you want to, whatever you're putting in there, you want it to have a harmony to it, or a discord, or something. And the thing I love about theater is that you can be so specific about what that is.
When we, there's so many different things that go into the conversation about set, budgets, where the audience is sitting, and what is your favorite kind of environment to work in?
Oh, favorite kind of environment. I think a black box is really fun. Or, I don't know, I guess that is kind of like a magic box of sorts, because you can kind of do anything and you can really change perception. One of the things I'm really interested in is magical realism. So being able to take something that you consider to be one thing, and then it turns into another thing, and then it turns into another thing. So a lot of that now has to do with the audience's relationship to the space, or at least that's kind of what it did prior to COVID. And we were going to this immersive experience with so many new plays and productions. Now, since we've come to this halt, that's a really big question of like, how do you design for these different types of proximity of actors to audience and audience to audience? So that's one of the things that we were really trying to explore in Mr. Dickens' Hat. And hopefully that will still happen.
Yeah, I found that seemed to energize you, that possibility, that open Pandora's box of possibility. It seemed to energize you guys. And even if we go back to doing it in our own, you know this as well as I do, when you go in one direction and perhaps that direction isn't the way you're going to ultimately end up to be for whatever reasons, budget or limitations, that will always inform where you end up.
Yes, absolutely.
You want to keep the best of those possibilities and let them inform the next set of choices. William, I'm really proud of your work. I'm really grateful, and we're very fortunate to have you at Northlight. And Jeff Committee doesn't always honor our physical contributions to the stories we're trying to tell, and in particular doing it with a world premiere. That made it even more thrilling for me because it told us that all of our cylinders were firing at once, both the playwright, the director, the wonderful actors, the costume design was gorgeous, and of course your design was both functional and inspiring.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that a ton. I had an incredible experience working on the play.
And I look forward to
it was a very positive experience.
Oh, good. I'm
good. And I just love Christmas plays. They're just so fun. Such a sweet time.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, BJ. I appreciate your time.
Okay. See you later.
Talk to you later.